Hey there, welcome to day 2193 of What You Up To Now. Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here, documenting the journey as I originally came online in 2017 from the brick and mortar and corporate world of business. Decades in both, over a quarter century in corporate America, working for some of the coolest, big and, publicly traded as well as privately held organizations on the planet. Really had an incredible corporate experience, as well as running, owning, and operating my own businesses on the side, which gave me a totally different perspective on being an employee as well as on being a business owner. So I kind of got the best of both worlds and the stresses of both worlds simultaneously growing up in my career, I call it. Well, now I do a lot more of what I want, when I want, where I want, wearing what I want, with whomever I want. That's been kind of my objective over the last decade or so, especially following a sudden cardiac arrest in 2010. I realized that our little red wagons can only hold so much, and mine was definitely overflowing at that point. And I learned the power of taking care of the different areas and aspects of our life, not just focusing too much on one area of my life. You know, I'd learned that from Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins back in the late 70s, early 1980s. Yeah, back in the 1980s. So I've been following Tony Robbins that long, and Jim Rohn. And realized that I had fallen off of setting goals for all the different areas and aspects of my life. I had only been really setting financial goals, career goals, business goals, family relationship goals. But I had been ignoring pretty much totally my physical health and well-being, my spiritual health and well-being, my mental health and well-being, my emotional health and well-being. Those areas were pretty much defunct because I was giving them almost no attention whatsoever. If I was paying attention to anything emotionally, it was because I was freaking out over something my ex-husband had done, which isn't very positive or good for me. So, long story short, after my sudden cardiac arrest, I had to totally and completely revamp my life. I had to say, okay, how did this happen to me? I wanted to ask, why did it happen? Because I think one of the first things that we do when we have a challenge of any sort, and we have them a lot, is we ask ourselves, why? Why me? Why did this happen to me? And I realized that that was the wrong question. It wasn't, why did this happen? Well, and then I got some answers. Well, heck, you haven't taken care of yourself. You haven't eaten right for over a decade. You haven't exercised for over a decade. This is why this happened to you. And your red wagon's full, and you're living in this powder keg of chaos and stress. So after realizing that, I quickly switched from why did this happen to me to what the HE double toothpicks am I going to do about it? And I started to take action to pay attention to and change and set in motion and create the life that I wanted to be living, instead of the life that I felt like I had to be living based on other people's expectations, based on my expectations of and beliefs at the time about what was expected of me as a mom and a wife and wasn't a grandma yet. Now I'm a grandma, so I have grandma expectations, which I love. But it's been quite the journey. I mean, ups and downs, and we get to a point where we think, oh, this is going really smoothly, and then all of a sudden, bang, something happens, like the pandemic, the global pandemic. Everything's clicking along nice and smoothly, and then something outside of our control pops into the picture and makes us get uncomfortable and change and grow and progress in ways that we had never maybe even imagined possible. So today and every day, I create a couple of pieces of content, and that's one of the good things I think that came out of the pandemic. I was doing it before, but the pandemic really made me say, okay, I'm committed to showing up every day, even if I don't feel like it, because it keeps me progressing and moving forward. And as humans, we want to progress. We want to grow, which is the topic of this year's annual challenge. Let's Grow Annual Challenge. So we're doing one thing every day to grow in different areas and aspects of our life. And instead of just winging it, like I did some of my early annual challenges, I actually am creating a structure and a process that we go through that helps us to create exactly what we want and continue to grow, and not just every day this year, but from now on, from this year on, you will automatically grow because you'll have set things in place that make it part of your identity, who you are and how you want to show up in the world. I don't know about you, but I want to make the world a better place. A lot of people say that, but it's up to each and every one of us to figure out, how do I do that? And I think the best way we can all do that, and the easiest way, is to be ourselves and set an example, be a good example. We all know people that are an example. They're people we want to model and emulate and want to be like and learn from. And then there's those people that are the warnings that we want to avoid being like them, like the plague. We learn from both types of people, right? And guess what? Both types of people come in and out of our life based on what we need at the time. Doesn't always feel like it, but it's absolutely positively true. And hindsight, looking back on those experiences and those interactions, we're like, okay, I sure felt horrible at the time, but now I see why that actually happened to me. I look back on my sudden cardiac arrest, and at the time, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I dropped dead and was in a coma and frozen, and then woke up and had to do cardiac rehab and couldn't work and couldn't drive for 6 months, which I will tell you, now I'm legally blind. So I think that was my preparation and my test for not being able to drive and have the freedom that's associated with that. But it's still really hard to not be able to just hop in your car and go wherever you want, whenever you want. It's a freedom that you don't appreciate until it's taken away from you. And so I think that was preparing me for this, that I haven't been able to drive since, or I chose not to drive since late 2018, early 2019. And of course, once I was deemed legally blind by the doctors and the powers that be, guess what? They took my driver's license away, and I didn't even know until I went to register for the 2020 presidential election, for the election. And I realized that I had no driver's license. I just had to get a state issued ID, which is fun. So anyway, topic for another day. So today our content was about the 6th step in our growing process for this year's annual challenge. I'm trying to make our process, our 7-step process for growing, that we're going to apply to each area and aspect of our life. I use a 9-part life framework, and we might add a couple different areas this year to really hone in on and focus on the areas that people most want to grow in, including me. But I like to come up with, in January, we look at a bunch of different growth frameworks and growth processes, and we figure out what works for us. So we came up with a 7-step process, and I'm now taking that 7-step process and trying to fit it to growing. So that, because why? Growing instead of growth or grow is 7 letters, and we've got a 7-step process. So I like to have things that are quick and easy to remember. So today's step 6 is about resilience and adaptability, because guess what? Change is going to happen no matter what. And we have to be ready to handle those changes and challenges that pop up. And guess what? I've got a framework for that called SOAP that I developed during the pandemic that we're going to cover over and over again this year as part of the challenge as well. But today it's about never giving up. And for never give up, never quit. I haven't decided yet. Probably never quit because it's shorter. Or if you've got a good N word for me for resilience or adaptability or dealing with challenges, hit me up, because I could use that. Sometimes words don't pop into my head as quickly and as easily as I would like them to. The SOAP framework was easy because the 4 steps are pretty universal, and there's a lot of different words for each of the steps in that process. And so I had a lot to choose from. Growing and the steps, it's a little bit more challenging. Anyway, we'll figure it out. We always do. I always do. We always figure it out. So we'll make it work. And then our topic for Supersize Your Business today, which supersizing your business is all about growth and progress too, right? We're talking about implementing sustainable business practices and making that part of our decision making. So how do we make sure we're not just considering the economic, as in AKA how are we going to make money, but well, we're making money, can we do it in a way that's good for society, good for our communities, good for the environment as a whole. Now, there's sustainable packaging. There's packaging that's good for the environment, and there's packaging that's really, really bad for the environment. We have whole plastic islands floating in the oceans because we haven't been using sustainable packaging. And all the bottled water and bottled pop and bottled things that we consume as humans, guess what? They're not being disposed of in a way that's sustainable. It's like, I will say this, and they'll probably get hate for it, but electric car technology, not sustainable. We have to rethink that, and probably not politically correct to say that, but if you do any research, or if you have a brain at all and think about it, it sounds good on the surface, but the facts are not consistent with what sounds good in sound bites. All right, that's it. Have an awesome day. If I can help you in any way, hit me up. Otherwise, I'm going to hang out with my amazing little granddaughters this morning, and I will be with you tomorrow.